Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjalimanatosmi लये संबोधयेत् चित्तं विक्षिप्तं शमयेत् पुनः सकाशायं विजानीयात् समप्राप्तं न चालयेत्. Om. As I mentioned last week, this sutra that we are studying, which is Dukkhameva Sarvam Vivekinaha, for a Viveki, everything is Dukkha. It's a very pessimistic statement, because that is, we see quite a lot of joy, happiness, excitement in everyday life, but still Patanjali Maharshi says that all this is dukkha, dukkhameva sarvam. But please note that dukkhameva sarvam is not for everybody. Dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha, for a discriminating person, because a discriminating person, a viveki, a yogi, can glean parinama tapa samskara dukkha gunavritti virodhacha dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. Because even the consequence of sukha, the outcome of sukha creates a distress, a tapa, and therefore that is dukkha. Then samskara tapa is, let us say I'm absolutely having wonderful time, good health, enjoying friendship, money, food, everything is there. But some loss, someday, somewhere else, some hurt, for sometimes there is some stimulus to trigger that memory, sometimes there is no stimulus to trigger that memory, and suddenly all the dukkha that we had experienced on that day will come back and we will feel the dukkha with the same intensity. That's called samskara dukkha. So because of this samskara dukkha, or gunavritti virodhat, that is, my nature is something, but my mental vritti is something else, they come into conflict and they also create dukkha. So much of dynamics is there. Outcome is a dynamic, tapatraya is a dynamic, samskara is dynamic, guna, vritti. So in this clash of a number of forces, usually the yogi, the viveki, always discovers the dukkha. And we are spending quite a bit of time on this sutra because this is the very heart of Yoga Shastra. Once we are able to truly understand this sutra, we have understood yoga, and also we can design an appropriate lifestyle. So let's recap. Parinama is consequential. So what do we mean by consequential? We depend on the means for our sukha. Suppose it is Atma Sukha. Suppose it is the Sukha given by Vidya. In that time, there is no dependence on anything. But what about all kinds of Sukha? All the Sukhas depend on the means, whether it is physical means or emotional means. So, in these dependencies, there is some Sukha. For example, the dependency on our children, dependency on our parents, dependency on our job, our institution where we work for. Everything is we are depending on them. My job exists if my organization exists. And as long as the organization exists, I have got sukha. And my sukha is dependent on something else existing. Is it very strong? Do we see fragility in that? When we see fragility, that is viveka. to say that it is very sukha at this moment, but there is fragility of the means on which I am depending on for my sukha. So, what is the implication? The implication is it develops attachment, isn't it? Suppose I expect that I have a sukha from my child, and the means of my sukha is being with my child or getting the support of my child. So, therefore, because I see my sukha is in that child, I develop attachment with the child. This is raga. And because of this raga, and the means is of our sukha is always unpredictability in future, there is a potential for dukkha unless I am prepared for it. And that is not all. This raga actually creates karma, because every time we find that attraction, every find that we find that clinging, then it is creating karma, whether it is living beings or non-living beings. It is, we are not trying to make a case of saying that be indifferent, don't have any relationship, don't have any affection. That is not the point. The point is to expect that this sukha cannot be disturbed, that this sukha is indestructible. That is not Viveka. That's what Patanjali Maharshi is trying to teach us now. So, what about the contacts that have caused dukkha? The means of that which has created dukkha will create dvesha in us. So that dvesha also creates a karma. Every raga creates karma, every dvesha creates karma, and it goes on adding to the karmashaya, the repository of karma that we talked about in the previous sutra. Okay. What is the other problem with the sukha derived from beings, living and non-living? These sukhas are called as Vishaya Sukha or sensory pleasures only, isn't it? Even the pleasure given by our own family, our own children, our own parents, all that is sensory pleasure only. And we have seen that sensory pleasures, what do they cause? They cause sukha, but do they give rise to shanti? Is the question. Sukha, yes. Does it have the potential to give shanti? That is what Patanjali Maharshi is saying. A Viveki will ask the question, is this sukha or dukkha giving me peace? Whenever the answer is no, it can only give you pleasure, the Viveki becomes alert. And in the story of Yayati, another thing we found was the increasing bhogabhyasa, not yoga abhyasa, the increasing bhogabhyasa he had, the demand of the senses increases. And another interesting thing is also there. As the demand for our sensory pleasure increases, the efficiency of the senses to enjoy the pleasure also increases. How do we parse this statement? Suppose somebody takes to an alcoholic drink. One alcoholic drink will knock the person out in the beginning. Then 2, then 4, Then a person will even say with pride that he can hold any number of drinks. So what does that statement mean? That statement means that the sense organs also increase their efficiency and the skill in the engagement of the sensory pleasure, and hence raga also increases. Suppose there is an opportunity for something that is jnanarjana is to be done, a satsanga is done, a prayer or a pratana is done, and there is going to be a drink party. What does this person choose? Even the learned vidushopi swarasavahi, that also Patanjali Maharshi said couple of sutras back. So we saw this is what happened to Yayati. This is parinama dukkha. Parinama dukkha. What are the parinama dukkha? Number one, that it is sensory pleasure. Number two, it is dependent on external objects and people. And number three, it increases the efficiency of the senses. And therefore, raga increases. These are the four parinamas. What about tapa dukkha? When a person is seeking pleasure of the senses, is it only the body? Any sensory pleasure, it is not limited to the body only. The mind comes and gets involved. So both the mind and the body gets involved. Then what happens is, with the combination of mind and body in the sensory pleasures, he starts involving others. And for others, either he will do anugraha. Let us say, I have taken alcohol, a party, I sat in a party with you, I have taken alcohol and you have served me alcohol. So a raga has been developed. And then I feel obligated to invite you again, and then I serve drinks once again. It could be alcohol, it could be any of the sensory pleasures. I'm just taking as an example. I'm not demonizing anything, but I'm just pointing out how the physical sensory perceptions can entrap us in raga. So you do anugraha to others by giving back the sensory pleasure. Or if that is not possible, there is going to be a pida. You will say, this person is useless for my party. And then not only we avoid in having a party, we will avoid the person from our association altogether. That also we have seen. So this anugraha and pida will result in dharma adharma. This is called tapa janita dukkha. Parinama dukkha, it only increases our attachment or aversion. Tapa dukkha introduces dharma and adharma. It is much more intense. This is one of the things that Patanjali Maharshi sees that a Viveki understands. Then the third one is samskara dukkha. A sukhanubhava, an experience of sukha, it will cause sukha samskara. Likewise, a dukkhanubhava gives dukkha samskara. When sukha karma phala is experienced, then that sukha karma phala is stored in the karmashaya. Similarly, dukkha karma phala is also stored in the karmashaya. Now, the sutra says, this is duality. We keep adding sukha karma phala and dukkha karma. I'm not talking about punya karma phala, papa karma phala. Please note, each word is chosen by the text very carefully. Sukha karma phala and dukkha karma phala are added on, and both of them bother the yogi. Why does it bother? Because he has become, by means of Viveka and yoga, extremely sensitive intellectually. Very sensitive. In fact, Vyasa in his commentary says, a yogi's mind is just like the eyeballs. If a grain of dust which falls on any other part of our body, we don't care. Whereas one grain of dust on the eyeball, however important is the task you are on your hand, you have to get rid of it, isn't it? Even if you are sitting in front of your CEO, even then, if a speck of dust falls on your eye, what gets priority? It is a speck of dust. It is because of the sensitivity a yogi would have actually created, that intellectual sensitivity. That's why he says, Dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. The next thing about the intelligence of the viveki is he takes ownership for his sukha dukkha. Otherwise, the person will be blaming others. Now, this has a profound effect because whenever I take ownership of my sukha dukkha, how can there be dvesha? So a viveki has no hatred because any dukkha that I am experiencing, I will say, I am responsible for dukkha. But what about one who has no yoga? For one who has no yoga, when the dukkha comes, he will do everything to get over it. A yogi also will do everything to get over it. And for both of them, dukkha will come again and again and again. Like sukha will come again and again and again. The duality has to come. First sukha, sukasyanantaram dukkham, dukkhasyanantaram sukham. Manadharma Shastra says, one after the other will come. When a person who is not a yogi never feels exhausted, in spite of getting continuous sukha dukkha, there is no tiresomeness in a person who is not a yogi. Whereas what about a yogi? The person gets exhausted and says, I want to do something about this continuous cycle of sukha dukkha. But a not yogi, one who has no yoga, will be in denial. Why is he in denial? Because he thinks all sukha dukkha's source is outside. So the paradigm shift of this sutra is taking ownership that I am responsible for sukha dukkha. Immediately, Patanjali Maharshi says, you will become a viveki. And then we saw that in the story of Kasha and Devayani, because this sutra is so difficult to understand, I had to use this story. Because fortunately for us, this particular story of Devayani has that personality of Devayani, illustrates this crux of Yoga Shastra. Now, Kacha's guna is Sattva guna. Devayani's guna is the opposite Rajoguna. They come together, right? Circumstances have brought them together. Kacha has to get the Sanjeevani mantra, and then it happens that Devayani is his guru's daughter, and she makes advances towards him. So when this has happened, there is a clash. Guna vritti virodhacha. There is a clash of Kacha's Sattva guna and Devayani's Rajoguna. And when this clash happens, who experiences dukkha? Look at the problem. Both of them. Kacha is constantly, 3 times he is murdered. He has got dukkha. Kacha is not available, so Devayani has got dukkha. This is the meaning of the sutra, Gunavritti Virodhacha. No matter what is the guna and vritti of one person, no matter what is the guna and vritti of things and beings outside of us, that gunavritti virodha causes dukkha. This brings a very important point. Question? Question?
So can you, Ashok Garu, can you expand on, so when you, on the concept of taking accountability for sukha dukkha, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's perhaps easier to take accountability for sukha because you say, yeah, you don't even think about that moment of time, right? But I think the accountability for dukkha is probably harder. Do you agree with that? I mean, if so, is it the right way to look at it, or can you explore more on that?
Sure, you take responsibility for your dukkha also, because you say that I happen to be placed in these circumstances willy-nilly. Kacha has been placed in front of Devayani. Did he want to be in the presence of Devayani? No. It was an instruction by his father. Father says, you go and learn Sanjivani mantra from Shukracharya. So he agreed to do it. Why he agreed to do it? That's a different issue. There, dharma samskara, which also results in dukkha, arises, isn't it? I am the son of Brihaspati. It is my duty to obey my father. Therefore, I will go to Shukracharya for learning. Why did I go to Shukracharya for learning? Because it is my dharma as a student, as a son. And I am discharging that dharma. But dharma also can cause dukkha, we already saw. Because I am adhering to the dharma of a son, I take responsibility for the dukkha. If I disobey my father and do the adharma, whatever dukkha occurs out of it or whatever sukha occurs out of it, I take responsibility. See, this is, you can see, Nagendra Garu, how deep this is. This trend of thinking, we will stop blaming anybody for our sukha dukkha. Anyone. I take complete responsibility. It doesn't stop with only sukha dukkha, parinama and tapa, but it is also extends to samskara. And who created the samskara? Again, I have created the samskara. So full ownership of whatever I am going through is the first step for a vivek. Because let us say there is a good person. Just because a person is good, does it mean to say the person does not suffer dukkha? In fact, a good person suffers more dukkha because he is good. Kacha is a good person, so he suffers more. Suppose a person is indifferent to dharma. That's again each one in its metric. Greater than parinama dukkha is tapa dukkha. Greater than tapa dukkha is samskara dukkha. Because samskara dukkha is caused by dharma. That is why Vedanta also says you go beyond dharma and adharma. You go beyond means go through and transcend. So the problem again is samskara dukkha is dukkha experienced in the past, even though it is long gone, every time the memory is there, that dukkha returns. Sukha is also like that. So what does a Viveki do? The Viveki has to remember and overwrite that memory with repeatedly, again and again. He has to override that with ideas of Viveka. In other words, not allowing Sukha Dukkha memories to crowd the mind. If we don't replace the mind with something else, Sukha Dukkha memories only will come and crowd the mind. When do we overcome Dukkha? That is why people say time will heal. I don't believe that. Because only the intensity of feeling may be different as time progresses, because of distraction, not because of any hard work. For example, loss of parent, let us say, loss of a spouse. Can you ever get over that dukkha after 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? Every time you think of that separation, there is dukkha. So we have got to overwrite that samskara by another samskara. What is that another samskara? That's where Viveka, since Yoga Shastra is not a religious text, if you go to a religious text, it says that you substitute it with Ishvara idea. Here also it talks Ishvara Pranidhana. We can see this classic expression of a Viveki yogi in Sanjaya's verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Please connect this to chapter 18, verse number 76, the very, very end of the Bhagavad Gita. Sanjaya has been going through this entire turmoil. And he says, Rajan samsrutya samspritya samvadameham adbhutam keshavarjanayoho punyam hrishyami cha munuhurmuhu. This is a beautiful, practical suggestion of how to deal with Sukha Dukkha. Replacing the repeated memory of Sukha Dukkha, which is samskara, tapa and parinama, by something nobler and higher. And he is saying, Rajan, hey Dhritarashtra, samsrutya samsmritya, I recall again and again and again. What do I recall? Samvadam idam. The discussion, the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Please think for a moment. For Sanjaya, he really did not have any stake in the outcome of the war. He is just in the employment of Dhritarashtra as his charioteer and a mantri, that is all. He is not defense minister, he is not home minister, none of that. And he was also highly respected by the Pandavas. Let us say the Kauravas lose the battle, still Sanjaya will have his position. If Kauravas win the battles, his position is not in jeopardy. So in no way he is affected. But what does he say? He's a Vivek yogi. So he says, I remember again and again and again the samvada of Krishna Arjuna samvada. So what can we do to deal with dukkha? Samsritya samspritya. Again and again we will remember Ishvara. That is why Dhruva was given, Prahlada was given a mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namah Shivaya. You take whatever mantra, every time the dukkha of Sukha Dukkha surfaces, Samsritya Samspritya. Since a mere mantra is not satisfactory to us, we need to have an intellectual content, Bhagavad Gita conversation. And how does, what analysis does Sanjaya give about this conversation? Beautiful analysis. Such a excellent feedback. Keshavarjunayoho samvadam punyam. This entire samvada between Krishna and Arjuna, what is the quality? The quality is it does not generate either sukha or dukkha. So this is again, please think. In our study of the Bhagavad Gita, is it creating sukha or dukkha? The answer is no, it is creating jnana, which is distinct from sukha dukkha. That's why we call it as jnanananda mayam devam. So this, number one, anything that does not create sukha dukkha is the real punya. So much is hidden in this sutra. It shakes at the very foundation of our understanding of some of the words. We understand punya is some altruistic work, serving somebody, panchamahayajna, etc. But here you will see punya is that which does not generate sukha dukkha. That's a higher quality punya than ordinary dharma. So Sanjaya says, samvadam punyam. How do we know that it is a punya samvada? Other things generate sukha dukkha. But this samvada creates hrishyami. He uses the word hrishyami. I am joyous. He doesn't say I'm happy. He says I am joyous, and therefore muhurmuhu, again and again. Viveki yogi. But he gives another indication, that is, what is astonishing about sukha dukkha? Astonishing about sukha dukkha is sukha dukkha also generate dukkha only. Dukkha, by name itself, it generates dukkha. Sukha, it creates sukha, dukkha, but the samvada that I am hearing, Keshavarjunayoho samvada, is creating harsha, joy. And he continues, Tacha samsritya samspritya rupam adyadbhutam hare. Vismayo me maharajan hrishyame cha punah punah. Again he repeats the same. Because he is looking at the expression of Dhritarashtra. Nothing is touching him. Hey Rajan, it is not only the intellectual content of the discussion that I am talking about. I am talking about the Adbhuta Rupa. Adbhuta Rupa of Bhagavanta, remembering again and again the Bhagavad Rupa is another strategy of avoiding the Sukha Dukkha, resulting in Dukkha. This is the message. Two-pronged consideration. One is sensory. You are remembering the figure of Venkateshwara Murti of Tirupati, Sri Ranganatha of Sri Ranga, Bhagavan Shiva of Kashi, Madurai Meenakshi. By remembering those rupa, sensory purity is achieved. By remembering the conversation between Keshava and Arjuna, emotional and intellectual harsha is achieved. That is how in these two verses Sanjaya is summarizing one who has followed Patanjali's this sutra, how his attitude has changed. And that's why very closely we have to say Sarvameva Dukkham Vivekinaha. For an intelligent person, everything is dukkha. It is because he has not replaced Sukha Dukkha by either Bhagavad Rupa or by this noble conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. If we can do that, Sarvameva Dukkham Vivekinaha, we will look at that. And let us look at this view whether Sarvameva Dukkham Vivekinaha is sustainable. Can we advocate this to anybody? The answer is, what is this idea called universe? Either it can come from the universal level or it can come from the individual level, dukkha can come. What is this Vishwa? This Vishwa, what do we see? It is perfect. It is organized. All of these things, this is what we see. And the universe is run on the principle of Rita and Dharma. Rita is cosmic law and on Dharma. And what about the individual? In the individual, he is a miniature form of the universe. For him also there is Rita and Dharma. How do we know? In the previous sutra, remember, he says, Jati Ayur Bhoga. Because of Karmashaya, what species we are born in, Jati, how long we are going to live, Ayuhu, what kind of experiences we go through, Jati Ayur Bhoga, all of these things are coming from Samskara Shesha or Karmashaya. And therefore, we are also following, at the individual level, we are following Rita and Dharma. On the surface, there may be different waves. So, if Bhagavan has created both the microcosm and the macrocosm, and he did it out of Ananda, Leela, how can you say that everything is dukkha? So we have to challenge this viewpoint, Sarvameva Dukkham. In this context, we must understand the words, the terms of Sarvam and Dukkham carefully. Sarvam means the totality of the universe. Dukkham is not just suffering. It is not just misfortune. If we do a wrong translation of the word, obviously there will be a misunderstanding. So, what is dukkha? Dukkha is not suffering, is not misfortune, but evil itself. So, the translation of the word is evil is disguised as a pleasure, as joy of life, as magic of nature. Spring is beautiful, pleasant, verdant, but in its womb, it hides the harsh summer and the bitter winter. The beauty and the energy and the power of youth hides weakness and the frailty of old age, isn't it? Is it true or wrong? Even the higher beings, let us take Gandharvas, Apsaras, they don't have the physical suffering that we have. They never have disease, they never grow old, they live longer but die still. Devatas suffer no corporeal problems, no corporeal limitations, they can go anywhere they want, and they have no distress, but still their longevity is also finite. And therefore, Vedanta calls this entire system as Maya. As long as we repose in this magic, this sage has to look beyond this, because even Prakriti itself ends up in Pralaya. Chaturmukha Brahma also goes away. Indra of Rigveda, who used to get the majority share of oblations and harvests, where is he today? We don't even remember him. Not only he is dead, but he is also out of our minds. In other words, as long as the power of time, of Kala exists, there is finitude of things. Finitude is equal to dukkha. So what does a Viveki do? He sees finitude, and therefore he becomes alert. Since about 14th century, 1409 to be exact, when Alexander V was installed as the Pope, there is a ritual they follow whenever they install a new Pope. Actually, he starts, once he is elected by the cardinals, he starts from the sacristy of Saint Peter, and he is taken in a procession. And he is taken in a procession to his quarters, where there is the papal throne. So it's a ceremonial walk. Till about 1963, I don't know why they gave it up. Till about 1963, the procedure was he would start in a procession from St. Peter's, and on the way, this newly chosen Pope would stop in 3 places. So each place they would hold out a twig, and then there would be a cloth, and they will burn it. In 3 steps they will burn it, and in each one of these in these ceremonies, as the cloth burns, there will be the master of ceremonies, and the master of ceremonies utters "Sic transit gloria mundi." This is the Latin word. When you translate it, it means the Holy Father, so passes the worldly glory. Remember, he is being installed as the religious head, the most powerful religious head in the whole world. To him, 3 times, the master of ceremonies says, Holy Father, so passes the worldly glory. This is a beautiful commentary on this sutra. This worldly glory, the 3 stops are sickness, old age, and death. As long as in the creation, sickness, old age, and death is there, sarvameva dukkham vivekinaha. Inevitable. For a Buddha, even he said that even if there is one person who is having dukkha, I will not rest. And he did not, till his own body crumbled, because he saw this dukkha darshana. So we can see this duality. There is a beautiful subhashita, Kvachid vidvast goshti. Sometimes we assemble in the association of intellectuals. Kvachid vidvasgoshti. Kvachidapi suramatta kalaha. Some other time we are in a party where people are all drunk and their tongues are loose. Contrast. Kvachid vinavadyam. There is beautiful music. Kvachidapi ha ha iti ruditam. As this beautiful music is going on, somewhere else somebody is crying inconsolably. Kvachid Rama Ramya. There is a beautiful woman next to me at some point of time. Kvachidapi cha jara jarjaratanuhu. At some other time, body battered by old age and sickness. Najane samsaraha kim amritamaya kim vishamaya. He is saying he's in this samsara, there is sukha or dukkha. This you can see a similar echoing in the Bhagavad Gita also, 17th chapter, 16th verse. Sadbhave sadhubhave cha sadityetat trayamuchyate prashaste karmani tatha sadshabda partha uchyate. The word sat is used in the sense of reality, not mindless optimism. Mindless optimism is as dangerous as mindless pessimism. So Viveki, he will always pursue only goodness and does Shubhakarya. Because we also have to give a solution, right? And the solution given by Vedanta is contact and engagement with the world must be in such a way that our mental stability is not disturbed. Because sukha can disturb our mental stability, dukkha can disturb mental stability. For a Viveki yogi, he will engage and contact. He will never give up contact and engagement, but he will do it in such a way that his stability is not disturbed. Then, an attitude of detachment and aloofness does not mean that the person has no enthusiasm. It only means that he directs the enthusiasm towards Loka Kalyana and Loka Sangraha. We have to study this sutra hand in hand with Gita Shastra. And thirdly, enduring labha nashta sukha dukkha by owning up. Fourthly, a sense of humor. So important. Because if we lose our ability to laugh, then we are bringing on the dukkha more and more on ourselves. So I created a phrase, Sahaja Sarala Samadhana Chittavritti. Sahaja, to be natural. Laugh when we have to laugh, cry when we have to cry, and neither of them should affect us. Good sense of humor, natural, sarala, simple, and a calm state of mind. There is another reason for this statement, Sarvameva Dukkham Vivekinaha. There is existential plurality in the world in contrast with the essential unity, Brahman. This contrast, Brahman is Ekam and therefore Sukham, and Brahman cannot create Dukkha. But what about things? They are innumerable. In our study of Shvetashvatara Upanishad, we have seen how a picture is given of the cosmic wheel with innumerable spokes. In this chakre, Brahmyate Hamsaha Brahma Chakre, says the Upanishad. The jiva is Brahmyate, roaming about. Brahma has got two meanings. One is roaming about, another is confusion, illusion. If we say that the Sukha Dukkha is something that is going to crush me with my highs and lows, then what happens? It ends up as dukkha only. Now the question is, why did this, again let's go to a very fundamental question, why even this Sukha Dukkha was created? Nothing created, I created it. Because in the combination of avidya and asmita, it generated ahankara. It is because of this ahankara created by the trigunas, it created a combination of vrittis, guna vritti virodhacha. Seeing this, a viveki declares, sarvameva dukkham vivekinaha. I have to reiterate the definition of dukkha. It is not suffering, it is not misfortune, it is our failure to see that there is one and not many. This is what the same warning Kenopanishad gave us. Iha chet avedi tata satyam asti. It is only when we realize it now and here there is truth. Nachedi iha avedit mahati vinashtihi. It's a great tragedy if we miss this, and we will never be able to overcome dukkha here and now. Again, let's go back to Kacha Devyani's story. How does Kacha deal with Gunavritti Virodha? Repeated murder. Remained indifferent to Devyani's advances. He is in the stomach of his guru. Even though it is politically expedient to kill the guru, he comes out and revives the guru. Accepts very gracefully Devayani's curse that his mantra is ineffective. He goes and teaches his students the Sanjeevani mantra. He becomes Paramashanta, and since then we have not heard of Kacha. Nowhere else. We have experienced many sukhas, and we have discovered that many of them have ended in dukkha. We have also experienced many dukkhas and repeatedly felt down. As Sanjaya says, instead of samsritya, instead of remembering that again and again and again, let us remember Ishvara and his teaching again and again and again. There is nothing we can do about the past dukkha. There is nothing we can do about the dukkha that I am going through now. And Patanjali knows this very well. So he says in the next sutra, which we will study, another beautiful sutra, another great nugget of wisdom, the next sutra, Heyam dukkham anagatam. That dukkha which has not come, let us do something to avoid it. We'll see more. This is such an important sutra, an understanding of which is very, very critical if we want to ever achieve peace of mind. Thank you.